Tomorrow is Election Day again. Tomorrow is Maine, which is state number 9, the 9th state to go through some sort of decision-making process toward picking a Republican nominee for president. And after Iowa and New Hampshire and South Carolina and Florida and Nevada, Missouri, Minnesota, and Colorado, let's count Missouri for the sake of argument, even though we might have to change this when they vote again and it counts. But counting Missouri, Rick Santorum has so far won 4 states. Mitt Romney has won 3 states. Newt Gingrich has won 1 state. At the beginning of this cycle, there were like a zillion people running for this nomination, but now we are down to 4, and all but one of them has won in at least 1 state. The only one of these guys who hasn't won is Ron Paul. Weirdly, though, Ron Paul seems the happiest of any of them in his "I just lost another primary and or caucus" late-night speeches, right? Ron Paul seems both happy and like he has something up his sleeve.
And we do have to remember, you know, the straw vote is one thing, but then there's one other thing called delegates. Yeah! I honestly congratulate him. He ran a good campaign, but I also said I would see him soon in the caucus states. When the dust settles, I think there's a very good chance that we're going to have the maximum number of delegates coming out of Minnesota. We will be going to the caucus states, and we will be promoting the whole idea of getting more delegates because that's the name of the game, and we will pursue it. There's some other good news, too, and it's an ongoing caucus, and it's over on the East Coast. I think it's the state called Maine.
Even though Ron Paul has not won anything yet, he seems very happy and excited about his prospects, at least in the states that hold caucuses instead of primaries. Here's the thing, though. We've already had 4 states with caucuses, and Ron Paul hasn't won any of them. So the caucus state thing may be his strategy, but it doesn't seem to be working. Or is it? Da, da, da. After the Colorado and Minnesota caucuses this week, Dave Weigel, our previous guest this hour, highlighted a rather arcane press release from the Ron Paul campaign. Quote, "We may well win in Minnesota and do far better in Colorado than yesterday's polls indicate." This was after the Minnesota results, and this is what we all think the results were from Minnesota and Colorado. But according to the Ron Paul campaign, after those states closed, they think they might win in Minnesota. In Colorado and in Nevada, quote, "We will have good numbers among the actual delegates awarded, far exceeding our straw poll numbers." The campaign says also, in Minnesota, where we have finished a solid second, it's true Ron Paul beat Mitt Romney. Romney came in 3rd in Minnesota. But the campaign says, in Minnesota, where we have finished a solid second, we also have a strong majority of the state convention delegates. The Ron Paul campaign is well organized to win the bulk of delegates there. They're saying they're going to win in Minnesota, even though they came in 2nd there. The Ron Paul campaign is saying that even though they came in 2nd, they could win. Again, we may well win in Minnesota and do far better in Colorado than yesterday's polls indicate. I want to explain what I think is going on here. Sort of need a prop. I don't have a prop. Let's say these are the people at the caucus. And the people at the caucus love Rick Santorum. Yay, we love Rick Santorum. A great majority of us here at the caucus, we love Rick Santorum. And after the caucus meets and they vote on who they support, the people running the caucus, the local Republican officials say, okay, people, you've expressed your views. You love Rick Santorum. You can leave now if you want, but we're going to stick around and do some party business. You can stay or go. It's up to you. And everybody goes, yay, we just voted for Rick Santorum. We love Rick Santorum. We're going to go home and launder our sweater vests or whatever. So after these people leave, what happens in the party business part of the meeting is that the delegates get chosen to go to the state convention. And the convention is where they're actually going to assign delegates to go to the national convention where the nominee of the Republican Party is chosen. But once the so-called Santorum voters leave from the caucus, the Ron Paul supporters stay for the party business where the delegates are chosen, vying to be chosen as those delegates. You supposedly need 1,144 delegates in order to get a majority and to get the Republican Party's nomination. In theory, the people who are chosen to be delegates to the convention are supposed to go to the convention and say, oh, all the people at my caucus love Rick Santorum, therefore I'm a Rick Santorum delegate. Whatever their personal view is, in theory, we think of that delegate as reflecting the expressed view of the people at the caucus who said who they liked. But what if the delegate who goes to the convention says, I don't care what all those crazy people in the sweater vests thought. I'm a delegate for Ron Paul. That's the Ron Paul strategy, as best as I can make it out. outstay the other candidates' supporters at the caucuses in the hopes of becoming a delegate, regardless of what the caucus decided. That's why they're saying we may very well win in Minnesota, even though Rick Santorum won Minnesota. They are breaking the connection between who people expressed a preference for at the caucus and how that will is expressed in the bigger Republican Party process of picking the nominee. In other words, it doesn't matter who you voted for, your vote counts for Ron Paul. This is what the Ron Paul campaign says they are doing. It's not a secret. Look in their press release. They're giving examples. In one precinct in Larimer County, the straw poll vote was 23 for Santorum, 13 for Paul, 5 for Romney, 2 for Gingrich. There were 13 delegate slots from that precinct in Larimer County, and Ron Paul got all 13. Not a secret. They are explaining that they are doing this. Is this legal? Apparently this is legal. At least it seems to be under Republican Party rules. The delegates are supposed to reflect the view of the caucus or the precinct that they came from, but nobody says they have to. And that weakness is why Ron Paul, I think, looks very excited every night when he apparently is losing these states, but he doesn't think he is. Here to explain further is Doug Weed. He's a senior advisor to the Ron Paul campaign, and we're therefore very grateful that he's chosen to come and talk with us. Mr. Weed, thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome, and I'm glad you were born, too, so I wouldn't have to sit here and talk to myself.
That would be very, very boring. Thank you for saying so. In this, explaining this process, I am absolutely sure I just got something wrong, because it is a complicated process. Is there anything about those logistics that I messed up in that explanation?
Boy, you did a great job, and you've restored my faith in journalism, because I watch television and I see them saying Romney has this many delegates and Santorum this many delegates, and as you know, not a single delegate has been awarded from Iowa or Minnesota or Missouri or Colorado or Nevada. And as you point out, we're tracking this at the precinct level. We think we have the majority of them. We think we've won in Iowa, we won in Minnesota, we won in Colorado, and Missouri's yet to be seen. And we think we probably won in Nevada because we're counting the precinct votes. The only thing that I might add is there's nothing wrong or deceptive about this. Anybody can stay. You know, Woody Allen says 80% of success is showing up. Well, our people show up, and they have a right to do that, and they're committed, and so they're running as delegates at the precinct level to the county convention, where they will again run as delegates from the county convention to the state convention.
Are they being open at the precinct level? Are they being open about the fact that they will support Ron Paul no matter what happened at the caucus, or is this sort of a sneak attack strategy?
Oh no, they're open. Anybody can stay and anybody can vote. In fact, the party is resisting this as often as they can. There have been occasions where they dismiss the meeting and then relocate in another place to try to keep our people from participating. There are verbal memos that come down from the campaign. In Minnesota, there was a verbal memo, they don't dare put it in print, in which they told all the establishment Republicans, don't vote for any delegate under the age of 40. Because they knew it would be a Ron Paul supporter. So we're winning fair and square. And I should point out, all these rules were changed for Mitt Romney. They were changed so that the establishment Republicans could give Mitt Romney a chance to win this nomination in spite of evangelical resistance in the South. So it's all been set up for Romney. We're the poor guys who come. We don't have Goldman Sachs money, but we're coming in playing by their rules. And yes, we have a smile on our face because right now, the big story missed until you just broke it tonight is probably we have more delegates than anybody in this race right now when all of this is finalized.
Sorry to interrupt there. When you said the Republican Party has changed the rules in a way that tried to sort of effectively game the system for Mitt Romney,
right.
What rules do you think they changed to Mitt Romney's benefit?
Well, of course, Florida was moved up because it was a state that would help him. Nevada and Arizona were moved up because there were states with large LDS population. It was proportional in the South, so that if Romney pulls 20, 30% in the South, but because of his faith, a lot of evangelicals go to Gingrich or Santorum or would have gone to another candidate, he still would get something. He wouldn't be shut out. In a winner-take-all, if he's shut out in the South, he can't get the nomination because, remember, the the South is loaded in the GOP because it often votes in the presidential elections for GOP. So it's not just population in the South, it's based on how their past voting patterns have been. So the South there's a lot of delegates in the South. So in that sense, it was gamed. And even the primary, the systems, the caucus systems were gamed for him because it was felt he had the money. And with the money, he could have the organization. We don't have the money, but we've got the organization.
I'm assuming that your overall goal is to make Ron Paul the Republican Party's nominee for president. I realize that's what you are in this for. But for the sake of argument, say that you do not achieve that, but you have amassed a very large number of delegates heading into the Republican convention. What would then be the purpose of amassing all of those delegates? What would you use that power and that leverage for?
Well, as you know, anybody who's an observer of modern political history knows that a brokered convention is extremely remote. There are delegates that will move to another candidate if they get a box of Godiva chocolates on their pillow at the hotel in Tampa that night. But Ron Paul delegates are not going to go even if they are offered Secretary of State. So if we can get to a convention with a sizable number of delegates, and if Gingrich stays alive and Santorum stay alive, we could have a brokered convention. It would be a huge show, even though there's a remote possibility. And of course, there are many things we want. We'd like to see the Federal Reserve audited, for example, and Romney's the only candidate left in the Republican Party who hasn't taken that step, and with good reason. His money's coming from Goldman Sachs.
Doug Weed, senior advisor to the Ron Paul campaign. Mr. Weed, we have the hardest time in the world trying to get anybody from any of the campaigns to talk to us. So I am, A, very grateful that you were here, but B, I hope that you'll come back. I think this is a huge story, and you helped us explain it, and I would love to have you back on the show if you'd come back.
I thank you for breaking the story, because up till now, finding delegates for Mitt Romney, he says he's got them, but it's kind of like weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Everybody thinks they're there, but nobody can name a one of these delegates that he's won, except the winner-take-all in Florida and the two primaries. But in the caucus state, you can't find them because they aren't there yet.
Doug Weed from the Ron Paul campaign. Thank you again, sir. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.